So first, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday evening. This is our online version of Learn to Ride. And the purpose of this class is to kind of show using pictures and text and a follow-up email that you will get in the next few days. How to teach yourself or somebody else how to ride a bike using the same method we use at our classes. Back in March, we had to suspend all of our programs due to COVID. And our biggest program is Learn to Ride. There's a huge number of people who want to learn how to ride a bike. And we restarted classes on a very limited basis in August or September. And but it's still not meeting the demand. And we will have more classes, a few more classes in November. And I'm trying to work out a situation where we can have some indoor classes at one of our locations during the winter. But the best we could do, given the circumstances, was to show people how we do what we do at our classes, so that if they want to teach a kid or another loved one, that they could use our method. And we have heard back from some people that they took this online class and then taught themselves how to ride a bike. I realize it's imperfect. I would much rather be doing in-person, face-to-face physical classes where people get on bikes. But between the damage caused to Bike New York's budget and the risks associated with everybody sharing equipment and maybe being in close proximity, it's been extremely difficult to do that in 2020. All right, so the purpose of this class is to show you, if you want to learn for yourself or teach somebody else, how to do it. A little bit about Bike New York. We are a nonprofit organization in New York City whose mission is to promote cycling through our events, our membership program, our rides, and our education program, as well as advocacy. We are most famous for the TD Bank 5-Borough Bike Tour, which under different names has happened since 1977 with only 2 interruptions. One of them was, of course, 2020. We could not hold that 32,000 person ride in May, hence the damage to our budget, because that's our biggest fundraiser. When 32,000 people cannot show up, a lot of them ask for refunds or deferments and such. Our Bike Ed program exists to get more people on bikes through skill building, knowledge, information, classes, and including getting people who are first timers on bikes. In the past 3 years, each year, we have reached over 24,000 people per year, even as close as 30,000. We do public classes in the evenings, on weekends. Most of those classes are live, in-person, classroom, or on bike. Most of them are on bike. We have school day programs with New York City Department of Ed. We have after-school programs. We have summer camp programs, and that's at 14 locations around New York City. So in a normal year, we're doing a lot. This year, however, has been pretty tough to get any of that done. So Learn to Ride is a program that teaches people how to ride a bike for the first time. We started that in, I'm going to say 2005. That was my first year at Bike New York, and I got a call from a parent who wanted her 13-year-old daughter to learn how to ride a bike, and nobody was offering classes or lessons. And she asked us if we would do that. And we worked out a deal where she would help publicize it and we would organize a class, and we did. And the reason why we did that is I had learned working in a bike shop of a method of teaching somebody how to ride a bike that I had never heard of before. And I thought it was ingenious. So when she called me, I was like, yeah, we should try this as a class or a program and see if it works. And I learned that method working at a bike shop in Queens, New York City. So Learn to Ride is kind of a method. It's a class we offer. It's part of everything we do in our youth programs with Department of Education and with our after-school programs, with our summer camps. You may have heard or seen that in our classes, when we're teaching people how to ride a bike, we take the pedals off. And the reason why we do this is so that people can learn how to balance and control a two-wheeler, two wheels in line, a vehicle that's shaped that way, before they start pedaling. So we kind of make people learn how to control this thing while it's rolling. Then once they can do that, we add in the pedaling. And we're going to show you the steps that we go through to do that. So tonight we're going to cover items you will need, how to set up the bike. We'll briefly cover wearing a bike helmet, and the bulk of our presentation tonight will be the method that you go through, the steps of learning and teaching. I have everybody on mute right now just because we've experienced a lot of background noise in our classes and people don't realize, maybe they're next to JFK and jets are landing, or there's a jackhammer outside, or the family dog is barking, or somebody's doing dishes or whatever. So just to minimize those distractions, we will offer an opportunity for, verbal questions and interactions at the end. I'm going to skip the videos because they don't play well over Zoom, but you will get links to these videos in a follow-up email, which will have a recording, including the slide deck and the questions, probably in 2-3 days. Anyway, this particular video is us teaching Bike New York, including me, teaching a Sesame Street Muppet how to ride a bike for the first time. And that was a really interesting experience back in about 2014, I want to say. We were teaching Murray the Monster how to ride a bike. All right, so here's what you're going to need if you were trying to do this on your own. Obviously, you're going to need a bike. At our classes for adults and teens, we provide the bikes. For our little kids classes, it's bring your own bike. If you are providing your own bike, we recommend mainly keeping it simple. If you are teaching a kid, basic kid's bike with coaster brakes and training wheels, no handbrakes, no gears, no dual suspension, nothing fancy is the way to go. You want to keep it simple. If you are teaching an adult, you want to go with a basic, simple mountain bike, a hybrid, which is what this bike is. It sort of looks like a mountain bike, but it's got larger diameter wheels. Frame is slightly different geometry. You could use a beach cruiser that might be a little bit heavier. You could use some certain brands of folding bikes. I would not recommend using a road racing bike with the drop curved handlebars. Those are harder to handle. They have less of an upright riding position. For a first timer, they are just not a good experience. I personally love road racing bikes, but I would not teach somebody how to ride a bike on one. actually I did. I taught a former girlfriend how to do that, and she eventually learned, but it was really hard for her to learn on a bike like that. So not a great idea to try that on a road bike. Some people have asked me about city bikes. You could try it, but there's problems with city bikes in terms of being able to do some of the things mechanically. We're going to strongly suggest that you do to get the bike ready to go. So here's a student at one of our classes, and you can see he is resting his feet flat on the ground while he's sitting on the seat. And whatever bike you're using, that's what you need to have. If you were sitting on the seat and it's all the way down and you are tippy toe, or you cannot touch the ground with your feet, that bike's not going to work in terms of learning how to ride a bike. So you want a bike that's small enough. I wouldn't recommend this type of bike for an adult unless you're really, really short. But for a kid, this bike worked great. For an adult, you're going to want an adult-sized bike. Let's move on. You are going to need a bike helmet. The law in New York City is that kids 13 and under must wear a bike helmet when they're riding a bike, which means older teens and adults do not need to wear a bike helmet. However, spills can happen when you're learning how to ride a bike. And biking is fun. You don't want to get a head injury over learning something new that should be fun and good for you. So please get a bike helmet. You can get them from Amazon, from REI, from bike shops, from Target, from Walmart, you can call 311 and get a free bike helmet. So you will need one of these. You're going to need some tools. You'll probably need some sort of a floor pump for inflating the tires. You're going to need 2 or 3 mechanics wrenches. And this one is in English. It says 3/4, but the mechanics wrenches should be metric. 15 millimeter, 14 millimeter, 13 millimeter will likely be the sizes you need. Or you can go with one of these adjustable wrenches with it's an adjustment dial right here. And I would not get an adjustable wrench with a handle that's any longer than, I think, 8 inches. And the problem there is as the wrenches get bigger, the thickness up here gets a lot thicker, and that can be a problem for one of the jobs we have to do on a bike. You're probably going to need a flat or a Phillips screwdriver. You may need a metric hex key set, or what's also called an Allen key set, and they come in folding configurations like this, or they come as separate pieces that are shaped like little L shapes. The tools you can get, again, at Amazon, Harbor Freight. There's a couple Harbor Freights in New York City. Sears, if they're still around. Target sells tool sets. Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot sell tool sets. But just remember, wrenches and Allen wrenches have to be metric. Now, depending on your bike, you may need to get a pedal wrench. And pedal wrenches are pretty much like these, except they're much skinnier while still being really, really strong. So pedal wrench, again, you can get from probably a bike shop, a bike retailer like Jensen, Nash Bar. You can probably get a pedal wrench from Amazon. And then you're going to need some space, some physical space. If you look at our locations, we use parks that have some sort of a large flat paved space where there's not a lot of traffic. Now, If you find yourself a nice large flat paved space and you try to go to that space in a park on an afternoon in May, June, July, or August, you're going to find it's really, really crowded. If you go in the morning or on a weekday morning, you'll find it's a lot less crowded. You want a space where there's not going to be a lot of other people running around in it, so that you have space to practice. Okay, before we actually start teaching somebody how to ride, there's some things we need to do with the bike. First thing is make sure the tires are pumped up to their rated pressure. Tires lose air naturally, even if they don't have a flat tire. And if you squeeze the tire with your hands and it's spongy, soft, if there's a lot of give to it, you need to put some air in that. Otherwise, learning to ride a bike is going to be really, really hard work for the person doing it. Pump the tire up to the pressure, which will be written somewhere on the side of the tire. And it will say PSI, inflate to, maximum inflation, things like that. You can use a pump at bike shops. Oftentimes have pumps outside their door. Gas stations have air hoses. You pay $1, you get a certain amount of time with an air hose. Be careful with that, because the air hoses let out at gas stations a huge amount of air, and bike tires don't need too much air. Again, pumps, Amazon, Harbor Freight, Target, Kmart, Walmart, bike shops all sell pumps. Next thing you're going to need to do, and this is pretty easy, is put the seat down far enough so that you or your student can rest their feet flat on the ground. And this is the seat post. So it goes up and down into the frame of the bike, and this is the frame right here. At the top of the frame is a little collar or bolt that clamps that seat post in place. So depending on the bike you have, you might need different kinds of tools. On a lot of less expensive bikes, you'll need either a metric mechanics wrench, I think it's 13 millimeters, or one of these adjustable wrench. Slightly more expensive bikes, you might need a metric Allen wrench. And then some bikes come with what's called a quick release lever, where you can open the lever and allows you to raise the seat, raise and lower the seat, adjust the seat, then close the lever so it's clamped in place. And you can see a lever that will be right here. Anyway, if you're not mechanically inclined, it's pretty simple. You put your wrench on the bolt that's right here. You loosen it. You don't need to take it out until this seat post is loose. You adjust your seat up or down. It's usually down. Make sure the nose of the seat is parallel, pointing in the same direction as the frame of the bike, and then retighten this. To loosen something, you go counterclockwise. To tighten it, you go clockwise. I know some of you may be mechanically inclined, but I don't assume people know everything. And there are some people who don't know that. You want to make sure that your saddle is level to the ground, not nose up, not nose down. Again, on inexpensive bikes, you adjust that with these bolts that are on either side of the saddle clamp, right underneath the saddle. And that you're going to need a wrench for. It'd be 14 millimeter or your adjustable. Make sure your adjustable wrench, that the jaws of the wrench fit the flat sides on the bolts pretty snugly. You just loosen these. You don't need to take them off. And you get your saddle level, straightened out, and then you retighten it. On somewhat nicer bikes, instead of having two bolts on each side, you're going to have a bolt on a clamp underneath that kind of be behind this thing. If you're teaching a kid and their bike has training wheels, If they are ready and they're tall enough, the training wheels will need to come off. Now, when I bought my daughter her first bike, she was a little too small for it to at least learn, but she could still sit on the bike and pedal with the training wheels on. So I left them on, and that's perfectly fine. She could run around and ride her bike, and, you know, enjoy that bike until her legs got long enough and she grew tall enough where she could sit on the seat and rest her feet flat on the ground. That's just fine. But just do keep in mind, training wheels do not teach you how to balance a bike. And they, as my daughter found out, they may not even prevent you from falling over. All right, so if your child is tall enough, you can, so they can rest their feet flat on the ground, you take the training wheels off, and they are held in place by the same bolts that hold the back wheel onto the bike. So that would be this bolt here. Whoops. All right, so unlike most things on a bike, you know, that you only have to loosen, you have to remove that bolt completely. You are going to need either an adjustable or a 15mm mechanics wrench, sometimes a 17. Take that bolt completely off. That allows you to remove this bracket, put that bolt back on, tighten it with the wrench, then do the other side. Don't get both of these sides with the bolts off, because then the wheel will be loose in the frame, and you know, you don't want your chain getting loose or your wheel getting misaligned in the frame. So one bolt at a time, one side at a time. I'm just noticing this kid's bike with training wheels has disc brakes. I have no idea why a kid's bike needs disc brakes. That's like a high-end road or mountain bike thing. Okay. Then, so everything up to this point is pretty easy to do. It's the removing the pedals that might be tricky. On a kid's bike with a coaster brake, it's pretty easy. On most adults' bikes where you can pedal pedals backwards, it's harder, it's more challenging. The reason why we take them off is that pedals are in the way physically for learning how to balance the bike. They stick out as the bike's rolling along, they hit you in the shins, hit you in the calves. You don't want to twist an ankle by having the pedal run into your foot while the bike is moving. So we just take them off. And the other thing is they get in the way mentally. People are like, oh, I should be able to pedal this thing, when they can't even control and balance the bike. So we just take them off, out of sight, out of mind, out of the way. Your best bet to remove the pedals is a pedal wrench, but on a lot of kids' bikes and less expensive bikes, you can get away with a 15mm mechanics wrench. Some kids' bikes will use a 9/16 wrench, which is the English size. Otherwise, everything is metric. Or you could get by with an adjustable wrench, but you do have to keep the handle short. If it's longer than 8 inches, it's not going to fit. So the way you take the pedals off is you put the jaws of the wrench on the flat sides of the pedal spindle. And I'll show you what that is in a minute. If you just try to spin the pedals around, that's not going to remove the pedals. Those pedal bodies are meant to rotate. This is a kid's bike. This is actually my daughter's old bike. And so when you pedal backwards, the pedaling only goes so far and then it stops as it activates the brake. So you have kind of a natural built-in stop where you can get good leverage. With adult bikes, mountain bikes, hybrids, some beach cruisers, if you pedal backwards, you can just keep rotating it. And there you have a significant leverage problem, because trying to loosen that pedal oftentimes just results in the whole crank spinning around on you. So what I found, the easiest way to remove the pedals, because they're in there tight, is you want to point the crank arm, which is this part here, that connects the pedal to the rest of the bike, forward. It can be forward up, it can be forward down, it can be forward level, but forward. Then put your wrench on the pedal spindle so it's pointing backwards towards the back of the bike. Then what you do is you put your upper body weight down on the pedal so that it doesn't roll backwards on you, and on the wrench so that you break the pedal loose from this crank arm. There is a definite technique to this. So this is the right side, and you'll notice I have my directional arrow going counterclockwise, and that is the direction you need. Put your weight down on the pedal, put your weight down on the wrench. Now you'll notice if you do the same thing on the left side, I've got my pedal and crank pointed forward. My wrench is pointed more or less backwards, kind of up and backwards, but it's pointed towards the back of the bike. And I do the same thing, I'm actually going clockwise. Now clockwise is normally tightening something, except on a bike. The left pedal is reverse threaded. They didn't do that just to confuse you and me. They did that because when you're pedaling a bike along and it's a regular thread like the right side, it will loosen itself by pedaling. So they reverse threaded it so it keeps itself tight. And that just means you have to do the same thing as the right side. Just put your upper body weight down on the pedal and down on the wrench, and it should break it free. Just a reminder, the right side of a bicycle is always the side with the chain. All right, so the previous pictures didn't really show you kind of the little bits where you need to put the wrench. So this is a little bit of pedal anatomy for you. So this is the main body of the pedal, and that's where you put your foot when you're riding a bike. And then this part here, the silver part, is the pedal spindle. And it may not be silver on your bike. And the pedal spindle goes from the threads which attach it to the crank of the bike to this flat part where you put the wrench, and it goes all the way inside here to support the pedal. The critical thing you need to know is, where am I putting that wrench? Some pedal spindles have 6 sides that are flat, and so it's pretty easy to get the wrench on. Most other pedals only have 2 sides that are flat. Now, if you are all thumbs, you've never held a wrench or a screwdriver in your life, a bike shop might be able to help you with this. A friend who has tools and has a little mechanical know-how, if you show that person this section of the presentation, that person's probably remove the pedals and do this other stuff for you. Bike shop's probably going to charge you a few bucks, and right now bike shops are pretty busy places. All right, very brief mention of bike helmets. This, by the way, is my daughter when she was like in 5th or 6th grade, thereabouts. She did some modeling for a photo shoot for our curriculum. So when you're wearing a helmet, you want to make sure that it fits down on your head like a hat or like your headphones, not resting on top of your head. It's not a crown. It's more like a hat. It should be covering your forehead with maybe 2 fingers width between your eyebrows and the bottom of the helmet. If it is not covering your forehead when it's buckled, that probably means there's a problem with these straps on the side that come down from the front and the back of the helmet. There's a little side buckle here, and these side buckles are different from one company to another. Hers, it has a little lever that opens up, and then you can slide that buckle up or down. And oftentimes these buckles like to sort of migrate clear down here, and that's not where they should be. They should be just under the earlobe And these straps form a V around the ears. Then you have the chin buckle or the jaw buckle, and it has a left and a right, a pinch side and the receptacle side. It's the, I forget which side is adjustable. Anyway, one side has an adjustable strap, and you should be able to buckle that buckle. And it shouldn't feel like it's binding or choking you. It should feel loose enough where you can just fit 2 fingers, as she is, between your chin or your jaw and the strap when it's buckled. And then when you look up, you should be able to just see the bottom edge of the helmet. If you can't see it, it's probably not covering your forehead. There you can see the adjustable strap on one side of the chin strap. Okay, we have gotten training wheels off, seat is down, tires are pumped up, helmet's on, we have a bike, we found a nice space to practice. So how do we do this? How do you teach somebody else, or how do you teach yourself? Well, before we get into that, we have some ground rules. First, this is biking, and biking is a lot of fun. It can be hard work to learn, and it can be even hard work when you know how to ride. But mostly biking is fun. So to that end, have fun. Don't criticize yourself or your student. Be a coach, be a positive influence either to yourself or your student. Be patient. This can take some time. Our classes last 2 hours. Most of our students, 75% or more, I've even had a class where 100% of the students learned. And that was a big class, not a small one. But be patient. Some people, it takes longer than others. Some people are good basketball players. I'm not one of them. Some people are more coordinated and athletic. So just take your time. Sometimes it takes more practice and more sessions to learn, but most people can learn how to ride a 2-wheeler. Be positive. You're trying something new. If you're an adult, it's a good thing to learn how to ride a bike. You make the world a better place when you're riding a bike. You are not polluting, you're saving money, you're doing something that's good for your physical and mental health. There is nothing negative about riding a bike or trying to learn. Take breaks. Now, this time of year is actually pretty nice. Well, maybe not today or tomorrow, but the weather's cooler, it's not so hot, but this can be hard work, especially if you're not in top physical shape. So take breaks, take a drink, bring like an energy bar or a snack with you, a healthy snack, just to keep your energy up. Have some breakfast or whatever. Make sure you're fueled up for this. And then keep a time limit. Half an hour, 2 hours, 2 hours tops. If you don't get it, try again another day. Try again frequently. All right, so here's what we tell and demonstrate to our students. Now, if you're teaching yourself, the demonstration part's going to be harder, and we have a few pictures. We haven't been able to create a good how-to video yet, but I'll try to explain it as best we can. If you were teaching somebody else, I always tell them these talking points that are on this slide, and I get on their bike and I show them what to do. People are mostly visual learners, and if you show them what they need to do, they do a better job of practicing it than if they're just listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth, trying to imagine what that looks like. So here's what we tell our students. Sit on the seat and stay seated. Don't stand up. Rest your body weight on that seat or saddle of the bike. Second important thing, and this is critical, eyes forward, pick an object in the distance and look at it. Don't look down at your front wheel or in front of your front wheel. Looking down means you lose balance. Then what you want to do is start moving the bike. And we suggest putting both feet forward towards the front wheel and pushing off with those feet towards the back, and keep doing that like you're rowing a boat, except you're moving a bike with both feet. And you want to move the bike fast. A bike that's just barely moving at walking speed just wants to fall over. But if you get some speed up, the wheels of the bike, the rotational effect is gyroscopic, and it actually helps the bike balance. So no speed, no balancing. You got to pick up some speed and some momentum. Once you do that, try lifting your feet off the ground and just let the bike roll along. And it's fine to put a foot down to prevent yourself from falling. It's fine to stop to prevent yourself from tipping over and hurting yourself. And we'll say a little bit more about that. We do have a technique for keeping the bike moving, because if you stop every time you feel like you're losing it, you're gonna use up a lot of energy stopping and starting. So it's easier to actually keep the bike moving. Okay. So here's sort of what it looks like as a picture. And you can see this little girl, she's scooted the bike along, and she's lifted her feet off the ground. And you can see she's got a pretty good clip going, because you can see kind of the blurred effects in the background, the blurred effects of the wheels moving, her streamers are flying. So she's going at a pretty good clip. It does look like she's kind of looking down though. I would like to see her eyes looking ahead. So you just practice that. Get the bike rolling, look ahead, you're sitting on the seat, you're using your feet on the ground to propel the bike forward. And once you got it going at a good clip, then try lifting your feet off the ground and just sit on the bike while it's rolling. We have another video. It sort of has some, this is not really an instructional video. I'm not going to play it. You'll get a copy of the video. It's one of our instructors at a class, and you'll kind of see what the students are doing. A few other teaching points we tell people. Some of the places that we have people practice have a slight slope to them. There's a benefit to that. On the downside of the slope, you can get better momentum, but then it's harder work pushing yourself, scooting along the upside of the slope. But with any kind of a slope or any kind of speed, if you do need to stop, it's better to know how to use the handbrakes if your bike has handbrakes. So we start out telling people right brake only. That is your rear bent brake on bikes that are sold and marketed in the United States. Second thing we suggest is, people they get wobbly. They lean off to one side. The bike seems to have a mind of its own. You're trying to figure this thing out. It's actually your steering that helps you keep your balance, believe it or not. Now, you don't want to overdo it with the steering, but let's just say you start rolling along, all of a sudden you start to tip off to the left. Steer to the left. So you steer in the direction that you're leaning just slightly, and that actually rights the bike. It recenters it. The idea here is to find your center of gravity on this thing that has two wheels that are in a line with each other. And that is tricky. There's a learning curve. And again, just a reminder, speed is your friend here. Better speed helps with balancing. One other thing I want to say about the steering and what you do when you lean. I mentioned keeping your momentum. Let's look at another picture here. So another thing we tell people is, as they're rolling along and they feel like maybe they're starting to lean off to one side, keep the bike moving, but put your foot down on that side and push yourself, not real hard. It's like you kick yourself back up to center while pushing the bike further along. And that's sort of what this gal is probably doing here. She doesn't have pedals. This guy back here in the blue shirt also. So she started to lean off to one side. You can see her foot went down, and it's a still picture, but you know what I would hope that she would do is keep the bike moving by putting that foot down, pushing off, but also like pushing herself back up to center. As you can see, that bike is leaning off to her right a little bit. And that way you don't get so tired, and it does help you start to figure out your center of gravity on the bike. It's kind of funny at our kids' classes, not the adult classes, never happens with people. The kids' classes, the kids are really impatient. They're like, "Mister, can I have my pedals?" And so I make them show me, can they ride that bike, feet off the ground, rolling in a straight line for some distance? I can tell you either have control of the bike or you don't. Control of the bike is you can roll it along for some distance without putting a foot down, without weaving, wobbling, swerving, making a sharp 180-degree turn, things like that. A nice straight line glide, even if it's at slow speed. Now, as the bike slows down, you are going to lean off to one side or the other, and that's fine. We get that. But before it slows down, that's what we're looking for. Can you roll the bike along under your own control? Are you balancing it? There is no like specific time we give this. We just know it when we see it. You either have control or you don't. If you do have control, then we're going to put the pedals back on. If you don't, we're going to say, hey, you need to practice this more, because putting the back pedals on at that point when you still don't have control of the bike is just going to be an exercise in frustration. All right, so let's talk about putting those pedals back on and introducing the pedaling. So hopefully you didn't lose the pedals, and you're going to want to thread the pedal spindles into the cranks. You start them in using your fingers. The wrench is for loosening or tightening. It's not for just like installation. You start them in with your fingers. If you try to use a wrench, you're probably going to get it cross-threaded, and that can be a big problem. The right side, you install that pedal by turning clockwise, the chain side. The left side, the opposite side, you screw the pedal in going counterclockwise, which is normally how you would loosen something. Remember, I said the left side is reverse threaded. Another simple way to remember this is the spindle. The top of the spindle, as you're screwing it in, is threading it in, rotates towards the front of the bike. So let's go back to some pedal anatomy. This may not be the greatest picture. Let's see if I can embiggen this. I can, no. So how do you tell the left and the right pedals? They look almost identical, but the threads on the left pedal are in fact different. It's just very hard to tell which is which. So they might have a sticker that says L and R, but stickers fall off, and not all pedals have that. They might have a number somewhere on the body or a stamp that says R and L on one and the other. But more likely you're going to find that R and L somewhere on the spindle, either on the very end of the spindle or on somewhere on the part where you turn the wrench, put the wrench on. Another way to tell if you are not seeing an R and an L anywhere is on less expensive pedals and platform pedals like these. look closely at the spindle where you would put the wrench. And one side, the left side, has a series of little lines or grooves in it. That's the left pedal. The right pedal is going to be smooth. It won't have those grooves. Okay, so one thing we've started doing at our classes, and we learned that from our instructor here at SEMA, is we have people sit on the bike, and this is the only time we ever hold the bike up for someone. Sit on the bike, they're holding on to the handlebars, and usually I hold the handlebars in the center. And I say, look at me, don't look down, lift your feet off the ground while I'm holding the bike, and find the pedals with your feet. And we'll practice that a few times. Now you can do that if you're teaching somebody else. If you're teaching yourself, it might be more challenging to pull that off. If I was teaching myself in this space, which looks like Victory Field in Queens maybe, is I might lean myself up against this fence or up against this wall in the background, support myself with my shoulder and my arm, and find those pedals without looking down. Remember, I said looking down causes you to lose your balance. If you look at gymnasts, people who do high wire acts, they don't look down. They look ahead, which helps them keep their balance in tricky situations. All right, so we got the pedals on, and now it's time for a little bit more teaching. And again, I give them some talking points, and I demonstrate on their bike or a bike what I want them to do. What I want them to do is what they were doing before. Scoot the bike along, sit on the seat. Well, not in that order. Sit on the seat, then scoot the bike along. Look ahead, get momentum, get some speed, then lift your feet off the ground. Except this time, while the bike is rolling along, you're going to have to find the pedals with your feet without looking down. This is another reason why we want some speed, is sometimes people have a hard time finding those pedals. And the more speed means the longer the bike is rolling while you try to do that. Once your feet are flat on those pedals, you can, most people start to pedal, or they try to. Other people just rest their feet on the pedals and roll along until the bike slows down. But the idea here is you want to keep the bike's momentum, and so you want to pedal forwards, not backwards. Now there's going to be a couple problems here that we've noticed happens all the time. So we started out with the seat pretty low so you could rest your feet flat on the ground. The problem with that when you go to pedal is now the seat is too low to pedal effectively. You can't bring your leg through the top of the pedal stroke without shifting your weight on the saddle and then losing balance, losing your center of gravity. So we don't do it right away, but we kind of watch what's going on with people. And if they're really struggling to bring their leg through the top of the pedaling cycle, we stop them and we raise the seat a fair amount, like a couple of inches. They'll still probably be flat-footed on the ground, but they'll have more room to rotate through the pedal cycling. We might even raise it more than that, a little bit more. They might be slightly tippy-toe, but not too crazy. In fact, for regular cycling, the seat would still be too low. These are beginners, so we're still trying to keep the seat pretty low. The other thing we've noticed with bikes that have coaster brakes, which is the brake that activates when you pedal backwards, those are going to be kids' bikes and some like adult beach cruiser, single speed type bikes, is they'll be rolling along, they're doing just fine. They lift their feet off the ground and the first foot goes on the pedal that's pointed backwards, and they lose their they activate the brake and the bike stops. So we keep the pedals level and we just remind them your first foot has to go on the pedal that's forward. That way you can get some pedaling momentum out of it. And then your other foot goes on the pedal and you can get some pedaling momentum out of that one. A third thing that I've noticed among some people, we've had some students who have never ever pedaled anything in their lives. They've never been on a tricycle. They've never been on those plastic big wheel things. They've never pedaled one of those toy cars or a pedal boat on a pond. And so they don't know what it feels like to have to use your muscles to make something go. So they're going through the motions. They're riding the bike, the pedals are rotating, but they're losing momentum. And the reason why they're losing momentum is their legs are effectively just not really doing any work. So you do have to put some force, some effort. You don't need to put a lot of force, but some force and effort on those pedals with your thighs and your calves to help propel the bike going forward. If you have a multi-gear bike, we recommend keeping that bike in sort of an easy-ish gear. That would be the smaller leftmost chain ring on the front, on the crank, or the middle chain ring, not the big one. And then on the back, the cluster of gears that's back there, put it either in the middle one or slightly off to the left, but not all the way to the left. And that'll be a good, easy pedaling gear that when you're pedaling, you can actually propel the bike forward without too much effort, but you also don't want a gear where it's just like way too easy and you're not making anything happen with the bike's momentum. So this might take some patience. I did have a student last week who seemed to be doing pretty well with the balance, but I just could not really get her into the pedaling yet. We did take the pedals back off and put her back at that stage so she could practice balancing more. She really wasn't getting enough speed to help her with the pedaling. You do have to make the bike go first. You can't just start pedaling from a stop position. The bike has to be moving first, then you pedal. So there's just, a few safety things we add in once somebody started pedaling. The first thing we do when somebody's starting to ride around with their pedals is we show them how to stop using both brakes. Up to this point, we've only had people using the right brake. So here's what we tell people about stopping safely and using the brakes. First off, number one is use all the brakes that your bike has. If your bike has only a coaster brake, then that's what you're going to use. If it only has one hand brake, that's what you're going to use. But most adult bikes are going to have two hand brakes. Sometimes they'll add in a coaster brake if it's like a beach cruiser. Use them all. Along the lines of using the brakes, for hand brakes, we tell people you squeeze gently at first, then gradually harder. Those hand brakes are not a light switch that are just on and off. It's not all or nothing. So we don't want people just slamming on the brakes by squeezing on them too hard. It just makes braking and stopping and slowing down seem really scary. So squeeze gradually at first, then gradually harder. Gently at first, then gradually harder. Second rule, keep your weight, keep that rear end sitting on the seat while you're using the brakes. It will make your back brake more effective and it'll prevent you from flipping over the handlebar if you're using hand brakes. The front brake, which is your left hand, supplies 60% of the bike's braking power, even though the brakes front and rear are totally identical. It just has to do with physics. And when you're using that front brake, if you remove your weight from the seat, that back wheel is going to lighten up as the bike slows down and your mass does not slow down quite as quickly. That back wheel will come off the ground. You will take a trip over the handlebars which is scary and can lead to some serious injuries. So wait on the seat, please. That also means don't try to bail out. We're not flying an airplane that's crashing here. Don't get out of the seat. Don't put your feet on the ground while the bike is moving. Keep your weight on the seat. Third thing is we keep our feet on the pedals until the bike's stopped. There is nobody here named Fred Flintstone. We are not doing Fred Flintstone stops. Some people get in that habit while they're learning, and then once they're pedaling, they decide they need to stop, or it's a panic situation. All of a sudden their feet go down, they're trying to stop. That's a good way to A, crash into something, and B, get an ankle or foot injury. Don't use your feet to stop the bike. Use the brakes. The only time you're going to put a foot down is when the bike is almost rolled to a complete stop. And it will start to lean off to one side, and you put your foot down on that side that it's leaning. Like if you're leaning left, put your foot down on that side. And then finally, a word about turns. Some people get this intuitively. Other people have trouble with it. When you turn, the bike does lean. It has to lean. It's two wheels in a line. And when you turn the handlebar a little bit for a turn, all of a sudden the bike wants to lean. So you do have to lean gently, not greatly, in the direction that you're turning. And if you're doing a sharp turn, please put the inside pedal up. You don't want the bike, the pedal, striking the ground if you're leaning over quite a bit as you turn, because then you'll lose control when the pedal hits the ground. And that's it. You should congratulate yourself. Give yourself a little Mr. Met parade or Miss Met parade for learning how to ride a bike or teaching somebody else. We do go through some more advanced stuff in our other classes. Like using the gears. We do teach the starting and stopping technique. How to scan over your shoulders without swerving, but really you've learned how to basically ride a bike. That is stop, start, ride in a straight line, make turns safely. So that is the end of our slide deck. I'm going to stop the screen share. And we are going to see, I'm going to let people unmute yourself. I can't unmute you, but I can give you the opportunity to unmute yourself. And let's see what we have going on in chat here. We have a hello, and city bikes are heavy. Yes, city bikes are heavy. They're probably not the best thing to try to learn on, but I'm sure people have tried. You also cannot remove the pedals from the city bike. All the parts on a city bike are proprietary, so that people don't steal the parts. And probably everything I showed you about removing pedals don't apply to city bikes. We do a lot of classes with city bikes, but we don't do learn to ride, because we do remove the pedals, and city bikes just doesn't want us messing with the pedals on their bikes. Understandable. Okay, everybody, any questions, comments, bad jokes? If you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself. Sally has a question. This question always gets asked, but thank you for reminding me. We do plan to have classes in November. In fact, I'm going to be posting a class probably tomorrow that will be taking place in Riverside Park next Wednesday. Now, due to COVID, we are still keeping our class sizes small. In a normal year, we do 20 to 25 people in a class. Now we're doing 10. You have to look on our Learn to Ride webpage because the classes fill up really fast for people who want to learn. And then I'll be working on posting some other classes. I got to get parks permits in, things like that. Get instructors assigned. So we hope to get that done in the next week or so. We'll see what happens in December. If it looks like the weather is going to be nice, we'll try to post a few more classes, see what happens. And then I'm also investigating whether we can go back to using the indoor space that we have on Roosevelt Island over the winter. Other questions? So Sally had another question. I put the cart before the horse by buying a bike before I learned to ride, which I believe will push me more to learn. So we had a person who attended one of these online classes back in the spring, and she had also done that, and she taught herself how to ride a bike. So that does work as long as the bike fits and everything like that. And I think the rest of the question says that I'm not sure I understand the rest of the question. So Sally, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sorry. So my question is, as I said, I bought a bike before I learned to ride, which I'm yet to get on the bike. I have some mechanical experience, so I was able to fit up the bike, and thanks to the video that you shared, I am on the right track. But the thing is that, as I was saying with the brake is not what you apply with your hands, but the brake is you have to pedal backwards.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not sure what the question is. You're just going to have to.
So the question is, as a beginner, I would therefore not suggest that you learn to ride a bike by pedaling back brake as opposed to having brake where you can apply by your hands, correct?
No, Sally, I think you can learn how to ride your bike with that bike that you have. You just have to remember when you start pedaling to not put your first foot on the pedal that's pointed backwards, because just the weight from your foot and your leg is going to activate the brake. You'll be able to learn on that bike, and the braking is fine. I mean, most of us learn how to ride a bike on a kid's bike with the same exact type of brake. It'll be fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
Now you'll be fine. You don't need to go out and get another bike. That bike will be fine for you. Just, don't get going 40 miles an hour down a hill, because those brakes don't stop as quickly as the hand brakes do.
Awesome, thank you.
So, no problem. So then Trifenia asked, will there be any weekend classes in the not so distant future at Shirley Chisholm? So unfortunately, we didn't have control over the scheduling and timing of the classes at Shirley Chisholm. The bike library at Shirley Chisholm gets really busy on the weekends, and we don't have a very big space there. So the decision was to do classes on weekdays. This is also, tomorrow is the last week that the bike library is going to be open. I think it's open through the weekend. And tomorrow is supposed to be our last class, although it's probably not even going to be happening due to rain. I can see about scheduling. We have a bike education center nearby in Linden Park, which everybody in East New York calls Gershwin Park, which was its original name. I can see if we have an instructor out there. You know, where we offer classes right now is really depends on where our instructors live and can we get them out there. So I will try Trifenia. I can't promise anything about Shirley Chisholm. Otherwise, the closest parks to you where we might be able to schedule something would be Forest Park in Queens, which is to the north, or McCarran Park in Brooklyn, which is to the west, northwest. Other questions? This is a shy group. You asked most of your questions in chat, but that's fine. I'm going to wrap up our class. You will get a follow-up email from another staff member at Bike New York with a recording of this class and the slide deck. That way, if you forget something, you can go back and look at it. You will also get the videos that I did not play because they just don't play very well over Zoom without being really clunky. And if you want an in-person class, do keep an eye on our Learn to Ride webpage. And then a special message for you, Sally. I am really impressed actually that you did put the cart before the horse. I think that actually works, and that
Thank you.
yeah, you'll be able to do it. And you know, it's kind of hard to buy a bike right now. There's shortages due to disruptions caused by COVID. We do hope to have a how to buy a bike class or bike buyers workshop class in the next 2 months, maybe a Christmas version of it. But you know, I was really impressed with the woman in Connecticut who bought a bike and then went out and just practiced. And she says, I bought it because I knew it would force me to learn how to ride a bike, because bikes aren't cheap. So good luck to you, Sally, and everybody. And, you know, let me know what happens. You know, shoot me an email. And if you are able to try this on your own, you know, let me know how it's going. And so good night, everybody. And, you know, good luck with everything.